left to die on an ice planet for 30 days until a human rescued her. Dr. Cassiopeia Vale pressed her hand against the ancient hieroglyphs, their faint luminescence pulsing beneath her touch like a heartbeat in the stone. The ruins of Kyrios 9 had stood for millennia, their secrets buried beneath endless dunes of crimson sand. She never imagined she'd become one of those secrets. The storm came without warning. The planet's twin suns vanished behind a wall of red, transforming day into blood-dark night. Vale remembered running, the sand tearing at her protective suit, the channels of the ancient city becoming a maze in the howling wind. She remembered calling for help, her voice lost in the roar of the tempest. But most clearly, she remembered the moment she realized the truth: they weren't coming back. Now, 3 days later, she stood in the relative shelter of the buried temple's antechamber, watching her oxygen levels tick down on her suit's display. The expedition team had left behind one emergency shelter pod, standard protocol for any mission. But they had taken everything else: the vehicles, the bulk of the supplies, the long-range communications equipment. Even her personal research data cores were gone. Quite thorough, weren't they? Vale muttered to herself, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. She had started talking aloud on the second day, if only to combat the maddening silence that fell between the storms. The question isn't whether they left me behind intentionally, it's why. She moved deeper into the temple, her footsteps stirring dust that hadn't been disturbed for thousands of years. The emergency shelter would keep her alive for perhaps 2 weeks if she was careful with resources. After that, she pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the walls around her. The hieroglyphs here were different from the others they'd discovered, their patterns more complex, their glow slightly stronger. What did I find? She wondered, tracing the symbols with her gloved finger. What did I see that was worth leaving me to die? The last transmission she'd received from the team had been terse, clinical: storm approaching, unable to maintain position, emergency protocols enacted. Standard abandonment procedure for extreme weather conditions. Except she had checked the weather arrays that morning, there had been no storm front approaching. This one had appeared suddenly, almost artificially. Vale pulled out her portable scanner, its power reserves dwindling but still functional. The readings from the hieroglyphs were unlike anything she'd seen in her 15 years of quantum archaeology. The energy signatures suggested technology far beyond even their current understanding, let alone what they believed possible for the ancient civilization that had once inhabited Kyrios 9. "You were more than just temple builders, weren't you?" she said to the empty chamber. "And somehow someone knew it, someone knew what I would find here." A distant rumble shook dust from the ceiling, another storm approaching. Vale checked her suit seals and settled in for a long wait. She had supplies for 2 weeks, maybe 3 if she stretched them to their absolute limit. The next supply ship wasn't due for 2 months. The math was simple and brutal. But Vale hadn't become one of the leading quantum archaeologists in the galaxy by accepting simple equations. She turned back to the hieroglyphs, their soft glow seeming to intensify as the storm outside grew stronger. There was power here, real power, hidden in plain sight for millennia. Understanding it might be her only chance for survival. "They left me here because they were afraid of what I'd discover," she realized, excitement momentarily overriding her fear. "But they made one crucial mistake." She smiled grimly behind her faceplate. "They left me right where I needed to be." As the storm raged outside, Vale began her work. The temple's secrets had waited thousands of years to be uncovered. Now they would have to give up those secrets quickly, her life depended on it. She had 2 weeks of air, dwindling power, and the greatest archaeological discovery in human history at her fingertips. The race against time had begun. Lieutenant Rika Nash stood at the helm of the starship Helios, his eyes fixed on the strange signal pattern pulsing across his monitor. Most people would have dismissed it as background radiation or solar interference, but 15 years of deep space patrol had taught him to trust his instincts. This was different. "Run it through the filter again, Arya," he commanded the ship's AI. "Focus on the subquantum frequencies this time." "Processing, Lieutenant," the AI responded, "though I should note this marks the 7th analysis of the same signal." Nash ignored the AI's subtle criticism. Something about this transmission nagged at him like a half-remembered dream. The signal had first appeared 3 days ago, barely registering on the Helios's long-range scanners. It originated from Kyrios 9, a restricted research zone under the jurisdiction of the Quantum Archaeological Corporation, QANOC. "Signal analysis complete," Arya announced. "I've isolated an embedded data packet. It appears to be fragments of a research log." Nash leaned forward, his weathered features illuminated by the holographic display. Play it. The recording was heavily degraded, but a woman's voice cut through the static. The discovery suggests technological capabilities far beyond current estimates. Energy signatures unprecedented. Kwon Och team implementing emergency protocols, something they don't want found. Identity match? Nash asked, though he already suspected the answer. Dr. Cassiopeia Vale, lead quantum archaeologist for the Kyrios 9 expedition, Arya confirmed. According to official records, she was lost in a sandstorm 13 days ago. The rescue window was declared closed yesterday. Nash's jaw tightened. He had seen too many accidents in restricted zones to believe in coincidences anymore. Show me Dr. Vale's research history. The holographic display filled with academic papers, expedition reports, and project proposals. Vale's work focused on the intersection of ancient civilizations and quantum technology. Her latest theories suggested that some ancient species had achieved technological advancement far beyond current understanding. Now show me Kwon Och's stock performance over the last month, Nash commanded. An unusual request, Arya noted, but complied. The financial charts appeared alongside Vale's research. There it was, a significant spike in trading activity just hours before the reported sandstorm. They knew, Nash muttered. They knew what she was going to find, and they couldn't let her reveal it. A priority communication alert flashed across his screen. Lieutenant Nash, a stern voice announced, "This is Control. Your patrol route is being redirected to the Centauri sector. Acknowledge and proceed immediately." Nash smiled grimly. Now they were trying to get him away from Kyrios 9. Acknowledged, Control, beginning course adjustment. He waited for the communication to end before turning to his AI companion. Arya, what's the real-time survival probability for someone stranded on Kyrios 9? With standard emergency shelter and supplies, approximately 12 days, Arya calculated. However, Dr. Vale's expertise in ancient technology and the unique energy signatures we're detecting suggest a possible variance in that estimate. Nash pulled up the ship's star charts, plotting a course that would appear to lead to Centauri while actually bringing them closer to Kyrios 9's orbit. It was a risky move. Disobeying direct orders would end his career at best, and at worst, he'd seen what happened to people who asked too many questions about Kwon Och's operations. You realize this course of action violates at least 7 regulations, Arya pointed out. 8 actually, Nash corrected, but there's something bigger happening here. Vale found something that could change everything, and they tried to bury her with it. He accessed his secure communications channel, reaching out to the few people he still trusted in this sector. First on the list was Commander Jin Zhao of the Independent Merchant Fleet. She owed him a favor after that business in the Orion Belt, and her ships could get places military vessels couldn't. Lieutenant, Arya interrupted, I'm detecting multiple ships leaving the Kwon Och facility on Kyrios 9. Their trajectories suggest a search pattern. They're not looking for survivors, Nash realized. They're looking for evidence, which means Dr. Vale is still alive, Arya concluded. Nash began encoding a burst transmission, something that might reach Vale if she still had any working equipment. It was a risk. Kwon Och would detect it, and his involvement would become known. But if he was right about what Vale had discovered, the consequences of letting it stay buried were far worse than any personal cost. Arya, initiate Protocol Shadow, he commanded. We're going dark. The Helios's external lights dimmed, and its energy signature dropped to minimal levels. Nash had spent years modifying the patrol ship for exactly this kind of operation, adding capabilities that weren't in any official registry. As the ship slipped silently through space, Nash reviewed everything he knew about Kyrios 9's defense systems. Kwon Och had armed their dig sites after the artifact raids last year, but every defense had its weakness. He just had to find it before they found him, or before Vale's time ran out. 13 days, he muttered. Hold on, Doctor, just a little longer. Dr. Vale's hands trembled as she connected the last crystal shard to her makeshift power matrix. The ancient technology hummed to life, casting prismatic light across the temple walls. After 2 weeks of working with failing equipment and dwindling oxygen, she had finally done it. she had activated the quantum core at the heart of the ruins. "Now let's see what you were really built for," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the increasingly thin air in her suit. The hieroglyphs around her pulsed in response, their patterns shifting like living things. Her scanner's readings were off the scale, showing energy signatures that shouldn't have been possible. The possibility had become a flexible concept in the past 14 days. She had discovered that the temple wasn't just a religious site, it was a machine, a quantum computer of unimaginable complexity. The hieroglyphs weren't just writing, they were programming, encoding secrets that could revolutionize human understanding of spacetime itself. A violent tremor shook the chamber. Vale steadied herself against a wall, watching in horror as hairline cracks spread across her faceplate. Her suit's integrity was failing faster than expected, and she had used the last of her patch sealant 3 days ago. "Just a little longer," she urged herself, focusing on the quantum core. "Show me what you can do." Aboard the Helios, Lieutenant Nash cursed as another Quan Arch patrol swept past his position. They had doubled their security in the past 24 hours, making his approach to Curios 9 increasingly dangerous. "Multiple weapons signatures detected," Arya reported. "They've armed their research vessels." "They're getting desperate," Nash observed, making minute adjustments to their course. "Any response from Commander Zhao?" "Negative, however, I'm detecting increased chatter on independent channels. Your inquiry has attracted attention." Nash grimaced. Attention was the last thing he needed right now. He had hoped to handle this quietly, but Quan Arch's aggressive response had forced his hand. Someone high up in the corporation was frightened enough to turn a research zone into a military operation. "New signal detected," Arya announced suddenly. "Origin Curios 9 surface, it's unusual." Define unusual. The transmission method appears to utilize quantum entanglement principles, but at a scale that shouldn't be possible with current technology. Nash's eyes widened. "Vale," he breathed. "She didn't just find something, she activated it." In the temple, Vale watched in amazement as the quantum core projected a holographic map of the galaxy, but not as it existed now. This was the galaxy as it had been thousands of years ago, showing civilization patterns that contradicted everything known about human expansion into space. "We weren't the first," she realized, her scientific mind racing despite her deteriorating physical condition, "and we weren't even close to being the most advanced." The map highlighted specific points, revealing a network of quantum gates that had once connected distant stars. If even one of these gates could be reactivated. Vale's excitement was cut short by another suit warning. Her oxygen supply was critically low and the backup system had failed hours ago. She had a choice to make: use her remaining power to try sending one last transmission or divert it to her suit's life support. Science or survival, knowledge or life. Vale smiled behind her cracked faceplate. It wasn't really a choice at all. "Signal strength increasing," Arya reported. "The quantum signature is becoming more stable." Nash's fingers flew over the controls, recording every bit of data. "Can you decode it?" "Partial decode possible. It appears to be a data dump, research logs, scanning data, and, Lieutenant, these energy readings are unprecedented." "Save everything," Nash ordered, "and get ready to." A massive energy spike cut him off. The Helios's sensors lit up as something on Curios 9's surface activated, sending ripples through spacetime itself. "Multiple Quan Arch vessels converging on our position," Arya warned. "They've locked weapons." Nash ignored the warning, his attention fixed on the quantum signal. Within it, barely readable through the interference, was a message: "Found the gate, don't let them bury this too." "Plot an intercept course to the signal's origin," Nash commanded. "We're going in." The probability of successful penetration of Quan Arch's defense network is less than 12%, Arya calculated. "Then will have to be the margin of error." Nash opened a channel to all frequencies. "This is Lieutenant Riker Nash of the Independent Patrol. I am declaring an emergency intervention under Article 7 of the Galactic Heritage Protection Act." It was a legal fiction. Article 7 hadn't been invoked in decades, but it would force Quan Arch to justify any aggressive action. More importantly, it would be logged in multiple systems, making it harder for them to cover up whatever happened next. Receiving response from Commander Zhao, Arya announced. Message reads, "Cavalry's coming, old friend, try not to die before we get there." Nash allowed himself a small smile. Helm control to manual, let's show Quan Arch why they shouldn't leave people to die on desert planets. The Helios dove toward Curios 9's atmosphere, its modified shields blazing as they cut through the orbital defense grid. On the surface below, ancient technology awakened from millennia of slumber, responding to Vale's determination to survive and to ensure that this time the truth wouldn't stay buried. The storm was about to break, and nothing in the galaxy would be the same after it passed. The quantum gate pulsed with increasing intensity, its ancient mechanisms awakening after eons of silence. Dr. Vale stumbled through the temple's inner chamber, each breath a struggle in her failing suit. The holographic displays surrounding her showed impossible things, doorways through spacetime, bridges between stars, technology that could reshape civilization. But she couldn't appreciate any of it, her oxygen was almost gone. Recording final log, she gasped into her suit's comm. The gate is operational. The ancients created a network that spans the entire galaxy. Quan Arch didn't want to study these ruins, they wanted to control them, to monopolize technology that should belong to everyone. Another violent tremor shook the temple. Above ground, the storms were getting worse, responding to the quantum energies now flowing through the ancient structure. Vale collapsed against a crystal pillar, her vision blurring. If anyone finds this, she continued, the activation sequence is encoded in the western wall. The patterns, they're not just symbols there. Her voice trailed off as darkness crept into the edges of her sight. The last thing she saw was the gate's light intensifying, becoming almost blinding. Then everything went quiet. Terminal velocity in 15 seconds, Arya announced as the Helios plunged through Curios 9's atmosphere, hull temperature approaching critical levels. Lieutenant Nash's hands were steady on the controls despite the ship's violent shaking. 3 Quan Arch vessels pursued them through the storm, their weapons' fire dissipating in the thick, crimson clouds. Energy spike detected at the ruins, Arya reported. Quantum signatures are off the scale. Life signs. A pause, faint but present, one human biosignature failing. Nash diverted power from life support to the engines. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before Vale's suit gave out completely. The Helios screamed through the lower atmosphere, its modified shields barely holding against the sandstorm. Incoming transmission, Arya announced, from Quan Arch Command. A cold voice filled the cockpit. Lieutenant Nash, this is Director Thaddeus Ward. You are interfering with a classified corporate operation. Stand down immediately or be destroyed. Nash opened the channel. Interesting threat, Director. Care to explain why a classified corporate operation involves leaving a scientist to die? You have no idea what you're dealing with, Ward snapped. Vale's discovery could destabilize the entire galaxy. Some knowledge is too dangerous to be shared. That's not your decision to make. Actually, it is. Authorization override, Omega Protocol. The Helios's systems suddenly flickered. Warning lights flashed across every console. They're accessing our command codes, Arya reported, her voice distorting. Corporate backdoors in the ship's core programming. Nash slammed his fist on the manual override, disconnecting the ship's AI core. The Helios lurched as it switched to basic systems, but at least they were still flying. Years of paranoid preparation were finally paying off. Nice try, Director, Nash transmitted. But I removed those backdoors years ago, along with some interesting data about your other cleanup operations. Silence filled the channel, then, all units destroy that ship, no survivors. The pursuing vessels opened fire with everything they had. The Helios dove toward the surface, weaving through energy beams and plasma bursts. The ruins came into view below, and with them, a sight that made Nash's blood run cold. A massive vortex of quantum energy swirled around the temple complex, distorting space itself. At its center, the ancient gate pulsed with power that shouldn't have existed in this universe. Commander Zhao, Nash transmitted on an encrypted channel. Now would be a really good time for that cavalry. Static answered him. The quantum distortions were disrupting all normal communications. He was on his own. The Helios's landing struts deployed as Nash aimed for a relatively clear patch of ground. The ship hit hard, skidding through red sand. He was moving before the engines had fully powered down, sealing his environmental suit and grabbing an emergency oxygen pack. "If I'm not back in 10 minutes, he instructed the ship's basic systems, transmit everything we've recorded to every news outlet in the galaxy. The temple entrance was barely visible through the storm, but the quantum readings on his suit's scanner led the way. He ran through howling wind and stinging sand, knowing the Quan Arch ships would be landing any second. Inside the temple, the air itself seemed to vibrate with power. Nash followed the corridors down, moving deeper into the earth. The hieroglyphs on the walls glowed brighter with each step, responding to whatever veil had awakened. He found her in the central chamber, slumped against a crystal pillar. Her suit was badly damaged, its oxygen supply completely depleted, but when he reached for her wrist, he found a pulse, weak but present. "Still alive," he muttered, quickly connecting the emergency oxygen supply to her suit. "Come on, doctor, don't quit now." Vale's eyes fluttered open as fresh air filled her lungs. She stared at him for a moment, uncomprehending, then understanding dawned. "You heard me," she whispered. "Someone had to." Nash helped her to her feet. "Now, about that galaxy-changing discovery of yours." Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor. Quan Arch security forces had arrived and they were sealing off every exit. Vale gripped Nash's arm, her eyes suddenly clear and determined. "Do you trust me? I just disobeyed direct orders and invaded corporate airspace to save you, so, probably." She smiled weakly and turned toward the quantum gate. Its light had become almost unbearable. "Good," she said, "because we're about to make history, or maybe break it." The gate's energy reached a crescendo as Quan Arch forces burst into the chamber, weapons raised. Director Ward's voice boomed through their speakers. "Step away from the gate, this is your final warning." Vale's fingers flew across the ancient controls. "Too late," she said, "the truth wants to be free." The quantum gate exploded with light, and reality itself began to bend. Light bent around them like liquid crystal, reality fragmenting and reforming in impossible patterns. Dr. Vale's hands moved across the ancient controls with practiced precision, even as Director Ward's security forces advanced into the chamber. Lieutenant Nash stood between them, his weapon drawn, knowing it would make little difference against their superior numbers. "You can't possibly understand what you're doing," Ward's voice thundered through the temple. "That technology was buried for a reason." "Yes," Vale called back, her voice stronger now, "but not the reason you think." She turned to Nash. "The ancients didn't shut down the gates because they were dangerous, they shut them down because they were waiting." "Waiting for what?" Nash asked, keeping his eyes on the security forces. "For us to be ready." Vale pressed the final sequence of symbols. The quantum gate's light suddenly focused, forming a perfect sphere of energy in the center of the chamber. "They left us a test, and we just passed it." The sphere expanded, its surface rippling like water. Through it, impossible vistas became visible, alien worlds, distant stars, places that shouldn't have been visible from Curios 9. The security forces halted their advance, weapons wavering as they stared at the phenomenon. "Command override, terminate targets," Ward ordered through their comms, but none of them moved. "They're seeing it too," Vale said softly. "The truth you tried to hide, Director. The gates weren't weapons or tools for corporate profit. They were teaching devices left by a civilization that wanted to ensure their successors would use their knowledge wisely." The sphere pulsed, and suddenly the temple was filled with holographic images, records left by the ancient civilization, showing their rise, their achievements, and their decision to step back and let younger species find their own path to the stars. "Impossible," Ward's voice cracked. "Our researchers found nothing like this." "Because you weren't looking," Nash realized. "You were too busy trying to weaponize everything you found." Vale nodded. The gates only activate for those who seek knowledge for its own sake, who are willing to risk everything to understand, not to control. She smiled. That's why they left me here. They knew my curiosity would drive me to solve the puzzle no matter the cost. A new voice cut through the chamber. This is Commander Jin Zhao of the Independent Fleet. The ruins are surrounded. All Quan Arch forces stand down immediately. Nash grinned. Cavalry's finally here. The security forces looked at each other, then at the sphere of light still showing visions of impossible worlds. One by one, they lowered their weapons. No, Ward's voice rose to a shriek. I order you. The comm went dead. In orbit, Commander Zhao's fleet had disabled Quan Arch's command ships. Vale stepped forward, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. The ancients left us a choice. We can use their knowledge to build weapons and empower corporations, or we can use it to unite the galaxy, to learn, to explore, to grow beyond our current limitations. She turned to the security forces. What's your choice? The squad leader removed his helmet, revealing features etched with awe. I've served Quan Arch for 15 years, he said. Never once saw them create anything that actually helped people. He turned to his team. Stand down, let's see what real progress looks like. The quantum sphere expanded further, its light touching every person in the chamber. As it did, understanding flowed into their minds, not all the ancients' knowledge, but enough to grasp its potential, enough to see what the galaxy could become. Hours later, Vale and Nash stood on the temple's upper level, watching independent fleet ships secure the ruins. The quantum gate had stabilized, its energy now a steady pulse that would guide others to similar sites across the galaxy. The corporate board is in custody, Commander Zhao reported, joining them, and our data broadcast reached every major system. Quan Arch's monopoly on archaeological research is finished. In the gates, Nash asked. The independent fleet will help coordinate their study, Zhao replied. With oversight from a coalition of scientific institutions, no more secrets, no more buried discoveries. Vale leaned against the temple wall, exhaustion finally showing on her face. 30 days, she mused, 30 days alone in the dark, and it changed everything. Not alone, Nash corrected, someone heard you. Yes, she smiled, someone did. She turned to him. What will you do now? Your career with the patrol is probably over. Nash shrugged. Commander Zhao offered me a position, says the independent fleet needs people who ask inconvenient questions and chase impossible signals. Those two, he hesitated. They could use more scientists as well, ones who understand the gates. Vale looked out over the desert where the eternal storms of Kyrios 9 were finally beginning to calm. The quantum energy had changed the planet's atmosphere, starting a process of transformation that would take years to complete. Like the galaxy itself, it would never be the same. You know, she said, I always wanted to see what was on the other side of those gates. Nash smiled. Sounds like an expedition worth joining. Above them, the twin suns of Kyrios 9 broke through the clouds for the first time in recorded history. Light spilled across the desert, transforming the red sands into fields of crystalline fire. In the temple below, the quantum gate hummed with possibility, ready to show humanity what waited beyond the stars they knew. Vale had survived 30 days in darkness to bring light to the galaxy. Now, that light would lead them all home.